You don't always have to one-up yourself and create something better than you did before. Not everything that you create has to be a masterpiece and, perfect. Sometimes, in fact, trying to make everything perfect and relying on that and closing that, almost infinite gap between 99% and 100% perfect is one of the quickest ways to kill off your creativity because you're chasing this almost impossible goal. Sometimes it's far better to go into a project or an idea knowing that it's not going to be perfect, knowing that this is the rough sculpture, this is just working out the edges, this is just finding the first draft. That alone is enough to spark further creativity and make you dive into a project further. And sometimes you can take that even further still by accepting that the thing you're creating, you're just creating for the sake of it. It may not even ever see the public eye. It might sit on a shelf in your own house somewhere. So today I want to talk about the joy that can be found in creating for the sake of creating. One of the most powerful things you can do as an artist or a writer or a chef or a filmmaker, whatever it is that you do. And it's one of the best ways to escape burnout, escape the fear of perfection, escape the fear of experimentation, and really find a new place and a new area beyond your comfortable boundaries to be creative in. And I think I want to start this discussion by talking about the myth that is perfection. We're constantly told to keep improving, keep striving, keep making progress, that each piece of work you do should be better than the last. The whole 1% method that's adopted by James Clear, which is a very good method of improving, but you don't have to do that every day. You're human. You can give yourself some leniency. You can give yourself a break. And even better than that, you can plan to have a break in. Purposefully have days where you say to yourself, this is my cheat day. This is the day I'm not going to do anything creative. I'm going to scroll on my phone and I'm going to fulfill that part of my brain that I need. Now, don't get carried away and give yourself too many cheat days. It's all about doing things in proportion. But having days where you say, I'm not going to work on that big project at the moment. I'm going to work on something else, very rough draft, very rough and crude, to allow my creativity to recharge a little bit rather than putting a pressure on top of myself. So yeah, there's this myth about improving every day, but one of the things that these gurus never talk about how that level of consistency leads to a certain level of burnout, not just from a creative point of view, but from a physical and mental point of view. So these gurus never mentioned that, yes, you have to improve over a long period of time, and you might be able to break that down, from an analysis point of view to 1% every day, but it's not always 1% every day. Sometimes it's 5% one day and nothing the next day, and then 10% and then nothing for a month, and then 1%, 1%, you don't have to be consistent in the way that you do this. That's just not human. The myth is this consistency of being better than you were every single day. The reality is that creativity is not a straight line. It's not a linear line on a graph. It's all over the place. You have dips, you have troughs, you have peaks, exactly like that. So some things that you do will be great, some things will be fine, some things will be mediocre, but the most important thing is to keep the process going, not necessarily the level of improvement. And find a way to give yourself time to just have fun and enjoy the act of creating and making things. If you're constantly striving to make a masterpiece, you're just going to find yourself frustrated and you're going to give up more often than not. And you'll end up creating a lot less than you could have if you gave yourself some leniency and recognize that you're just a human being. Because when you think of it, one of the things that human beings are so good at, and this is shown right from when you're a kid, is exploring the unknown areas of your life. There were points when, as an artist, you didn't know how to draw when you were little. You didn't know how to play the keyboard. You didn't know how to play the guitar. You didn't know how to use an oven or a knife or whatever it is, create films, use a camera. And you, at that point in time, would have started to explore the areas and have fun with it. You never explored it in a serious way. You always explored it in a, I wonder what can happen here, or, hey, look, my drawing of a giraffe is somewhat accurate to what a giraffe looks like. But hey, let's give this giraffe 2 heads. Let's explore what happens there. Maybe I'll find a new creative way, and I'll learn things along the way. Because when you were operating like that as a child, you weren't doing it to impress someone. So there was no measurement of perfection or improvement or what a masterpiece is. There was just your own interpretation of what was fun and what felt like you were earning something. You were making your own internal progress, and it felt good. It felt satisfying to you. Now that's very hard to do as adults, and one of the biggest things that we give up as we grow older is that sense of creativity and exploring the unknown. We just start thinking, we start this mindset as we become adults that everything has, every minute that we spend or everything we put time and effort into has to have a value of worth against it. Why am I doing this? Is it worth it? Why am I playing this video game? What am I doing with my time? And that's a really big, a really sad thing, but it doesn't have to be like that. You can answer that question, why am I playing this video game? What am I doing with my time? The answer can be, because it's fun and I enjoy doing it. And it's those kinds of activities and that kind of mindset that will help you unlock new creative pathways, new ideas and new passions that will, in the long run, help you improve your craft and help you become a better creator. Creativity basically is just a form of play and a form of finding pleasure in all kinds of activities that you do. And we've seen creators throughout history do exactly that. And I won't go into detail. I've spoken a lot about creators from past history on this channel. So if you want to hear more about that, go and check out some of the other videos. But one of the key things that runs through all of the brilliant creative minds that we've had over the last 200, 300, 500 years is that they weren't afraid to get messy, to be imperfect, and to leave unfinished work. They weren't always chasing everything and trying to produce it into a masterpiece. They were happy for some things to just sit and be what they were. Sit on a shelf somewhere and potentially never even be seen by anyone. But every creative act, no matter how big or small, adds to this body of your collective work, your sort of portfolio, even if no one sees it. All those small creative acts add up, and they sort of shape who you are as a creative. And that addition of all the small things, all the small lessons learned, all the small fun things that you discover, they all compound and turn into masterpieces. They turn into skills, styles, your voice, your passion, and your personality that you pour into one project one day, and that turns out to be the project that is your masterpiece. It's your Mona Lisa. So yeah, I guess laying the foundations of having fun and enjoying what you do from a creative standpoint and giving yourself breaks rather than constantly improving is what's going to lead you to become a stronger creative overall. But it can be very hard to start that. So here are some sort of practical steps that you can do. The first one I've sort of mentioned is create something that you know is going to be purposely bad, purposely rough. Whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're a writer, a musician, photographer, sculptor, artist, whatever, just give yourself like 10 minutes, 15 minutes and create something sort of bad, but that is out of your normal convention, something you don't normally make. Just so that you're pushing the boundaries of what it is that you normally do, and maybe you'll come across a new skill or learn a new lesson in a new way that will compound, as we spoke about. Create stuff just for yourself that you're not going to share with anyone, that you're not going to post online. Another interesting thing about this is quite often you'll do stuff for yourself and you'll tuck it away, but then a couple of months or a couple of years later you'll come across something that someone else has done and you'll go, oh my god, that's so similar to like the thing I did but never shared. And you can then start to talk with that person and understand their journey and see what lessons they learned from the same activity, and maybe that will inspire you as well to pick up, to go and dig that out from a drawer and pick it back up again and compound it into a masterpiece. Sometimes the timing just isn't right, so if you create something just for yourself and you tuck it away, eventually the timing does come back round and the energy is right for it for that time. And then I guess the last practical thing you can do is to actually focus on the process that you're creating and the systems you're creating to allow you to do more creative things. This can be as simple as just keeping a pen and paper on you if you're sketching, just so that you're like, oh, I'm on a train for 15 minutes. Now would be a good time for me to do a little pointless creative exercise. Screw it up at the end, throw it in the bin. But by creating a process and easy systems for you to actively be creative when you have the time to be creative that is outside of your dedicated project time. I didn't really word that very well, but I think you know what I mean. Outside of your dedicated project that I'm working on this masterpiece, create some easy ways for you to do that outside of your studio, on the go, when the time strikes. And then you'll realize that these little 15-minute windows that you have on trains, or, you know, whilst you're waiting for the kettle to boil, or you're cooking or whatever, those 15 minutes in a day compound, and you actually get a lot of creativity out of the middle times, the in-between times. Yeah. So if you take anything away from this video, it's that, one, you shouldn't beat yourself up if you're not improving all the time. In fact, you should give yourself time to spend doing things that isn't an improvement, because creativity isn't a straight line, it's wibbly wobbly, and you have to have downtime as well as uptime. And the universe will sort of give you these moments. If you spend, and this is all within sort of moderation, you can't just go and lie on a sofa for a year, but if you give yourself downtime, the universe will sort of balance that out by giving you other periods where you have incredible passion for your masterpiece project, and you'll find yourself really locked in and in the zone. And that's sort of a reflection of the times that you were really locked out and not in the zone. So it sort of evens out over time. Yeah, and not everything has to be a masterpiece. Sometimes you can just do stuff and create stuff for the sake of creativity and the sake of exploring something new. That's how we all started as kids. We just explored things. We didn't have a grand plan of what we were going to make. And it's never a bad thing to get back to that. I think it's times like that when your best work will come to you naturally. You stop overthinking and you just start making stuff. Yeah. Let me know if there's anything that you do as a creative person to take yourself off of your main project and get into a bit of a different creative strut and a creative flow. It would be great if you could share any of that with the people here. And the other thing to mention is that we're about halfway through this first season exploring creativity, and I would love to know what you guys want to talk about in the next season. I've got a couple of ideas floating around. I kind of want to do a deep dive into a couple of the creative people from throughout history, you know, Da Vinci, Steve Jobs, Rick Rubin, etc., and talk a little bit about their life, what inspired their creativity and how it's impacted other creatives around the world. I'd quite like to do a little series as well that's more about promoting yourself as a creative in this current world. You know, there's a lot of stuff going around. We've got AI, got social media that's changing from previous formats into short form formats, and there's this whole attention economy to deal with. I'd quite like to explore how we as creatives can lean into that and make the most of it without feeling like we are becoming slaves to the algorithms and the systems. But yeah, if there's anything else you think that the next season should be on, let me know in the comments. I would love to chat with anybody that has some good ideas. Yeah, thank you so much for sticking around. Till next time.